Hello and welcome guys to my channel. So here I am today with a new and a fresh topic. Today I want to discuss about classical conditioning, which is very renowned and very famous topic and theory of psychology. So let's start. So first of all, we will start from the question, what is classical conditioning in psychology? The definition. So classical conditioning is also known as Pavlovian or respondent conditioning. So the classical conditioning is very famous and very renowned in the field of psychology, which is discovered by Russian physiologist and psychologist Ivan P. Pavlov. This is a learning process that occurs through associations between an environmental stimulus and natural occurring stimulus. In other or simple terms, we can say two stimulus are linked together to produce a new learned response kind of a stimulus in a person or any kind of animal. So as you can see in the screen, the key person associated with classical conditioning, as we can say the father of classical conditioning, which discovered was by Ivan P. Pavlov, who was a Russian physiologist and psychologist, as we have told before. Classical conditioning is a type of learning that has a major influence on behaviors, on individual behaviors and their thinking patterns. Classical conditioning refers to learning that occurs when one stimulus becomes associated or with a mix up with a particular result as a mixations of that. After the association, the previously neutral stimulus, which is also called in short form NS, develops a response, which is also called conditioned response, which is CR. We will discuss about that in further. Classical conditioning is also known as Pavlovian or respondent conditioning, as I told you before in the very outlook of the definition of classical condition. In simple terms, we can say two stimuli are linked together to produce a new learned response in a person or any kind of animal. Now let's go further and let's discuss who was the father of classical conditioning and who discovered it firstly. So as you can see on the screen, the brief discussion about Ivan Pavlov, who was born on September 14th, 1849, and he was the father of classical conditioning. Like he discovered it firstly when he was like doing researches and experiments on dogs. He was the first one who did research and experiment on dogs, and he found it that okay, there can be a study. So Ivan Pavlov was a Russian scientist whose work with dogs has been influential in understanding how learning can occur. Through his research and experiments, he established the theory of classical conditioning, which got very famous, and because of that, he got Nobel Prize for this in 1904. And he started the research about classical conditioning, as many researchers and scientists have believed that maybe in 1897 or the 1899 he started the research on classical conditioning, and he got Nobel Prize in 1904 for his work and experiment on classical conditioning with the help of dogs. When it was founded, the classical conditioning was first studied by Ivan Pavlov, as we have learned, who conducted experiments with dogs in 1897 and between 1899. It was the discovery which gave him his first Nobel Prize in 1904. The most famous example of classical conditioning was Pavlov's experiment with dogs, who salivated in response to a bell tone. Pavlov showed that when a bell was sounded each time the dog was fed, the dog learned to associate and mix up with the sound with the presentation of the dog, as the dog thought that when the bell will ring, the food will present in front of him and he can enjoy the food and the staff can go away from him. So this was the best known of Pavlov's experiments, involves the study of the salivation of the dogs in front of them when they are given the food and when they have heard the sound of the bell tone. As you can notice in the screen that the dog is presented here and the food is in front of him. So whenever the food is in front of him, before that the bell is being presented in front of him and he can hear the bell. After that he can get the food. So by hearing the bell, after some kind of numerous kind of experiments and experiments in front of him, he can notice that after hearing the bell he is presented by the food. So whenever he will hear the bell next time, he will think that in his mind that okay, now the bell has been presented and I have heard the bell, so I can get the food right now. So the bell and the food is now interconnected with each other. Now let's discuss some short forms of classical conditioning. So NS, which is neutral stimulus. The neutral stimulus is the bell, which is like presented in front of the dog before presenting any kind of food item which he can eat. So the bell can be the neutral stimulus, which is NS. Second one can be conditioned stimulus, which is short form CS. The conditioned stimulus can be the ringing of bell. US, unconditioned stimulus, can be the food itself, the sight or smell or vision of the food. UR, unconditioned response, can be the dog's natural salivation in response of seeing or smelling food presented in front of him. And the last short form is CR, which is conditioned response. Conditioned response was salivation of dogs in response of ringing bell, even the no food was presented in front of him. Why it happened? Because CR happens only when like the mind of any kind of individual is thinking that okay, the ring has been like rang and now the food will present in front of him, so he can give in conditioned response the salivation of dog even when the food is not presented in front of him. Just the thinking of the ringing of the bell can give him the salivation. So now let's discuss what are the stages of classical conditioning. There are three stages of classical conditioning we will discuss here. Stage 1, firstly, before conditioning. So the stage 1 is before conditioning. An unconditioned stimulus, which is US food, produces an unconditioned response, which is UR salivation, and neutral stimulus NS bell doesn't have any kind of effect before conditioning. In this stage, the unconditioned stimulus generates an unconditioned response, which is UR in short form. The response is natural and does not require any kind of training. This is the stage 1 before conditioning. So, for example, as we can take the example here, like for you, a perfume could create a response of happiness. So let's go towards stage 2 during conditioning. So during conditioning, the unconditioned stimulus, which is US food, is presented repeatedly just after the presentation of neutral stimulus NS, which is bell. During this stage, a conditioned stimulus, which is CS, is associated with the unconditioned stimulus. The conditioned stimulus should occur before or during the same time as an unconditioned stimulus to get the desired conditioning. Here we'll give example like of stage 2 can be a perfume might be associated with a specific person who wants to really apply the perfume. Now we'll go towards stage 3 after conditioning. After conditioning, the neutral stimulus, which is NS, which is also bell, alone produces a conditioned response, salivation, thus becoming a conditioned response even the food is not presented in front of the dog. The conditioned stimulus is association with unconditioned stimulus. For instance, a person who has been associated with a sweet smelling perfume or sweet smelling fragrance perfume is now found attractive because he's been in contact with that perfume and he's been liking that perfume. Now let's see what are the benefits of classical conditioning in the field of psychology. Classical conditioning can play a significant role as behavioral therapies and some theories which can considered by psychologists who can treat some patients. For example, treating phobias, treating anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder, which is OCD in short form, recovering from drug abuse who are having taking intoxications too, associated positive emotional experience with learning in classrooms and who are having difficulties in studies. So till now we have briefly discussed what is classical conditioning. So I want to make sure more some things and some points which can be 5 classical conditioning examples in everyday humans life. So first is smartphone tones and vibes. If you have ever been in a public area and heard a kind of a notification by someone's mobile, and you will think that okay, this is the same sound and the same ringtone as we have occurred in our phone, so you will just take out your phone from your pocket immediately and suddenly you will try to see that okay, if it is our phone or if it's someone else. So you will get some kind of a stimulation like okay, it can be our phone also which is ringing. So when you just see the phone and you will have some kind of satisfaction that it's not our phone, then you can keep your phone again in the pocket and you will just realize that okay, it was someone else. So this is kind of a stimulation which can be occur when you hear someone else notification chime or notification ringtone, so you can just have a kind of hallucination that it can be yours too. Second is restaurant aromas. So whenever you go towards any restaurant, or whenever you are going towards any kind of street foods or any kind of foodies items, whenever you smell any kind, for example a pizza, so you will just feel like to eat it before even the pizza has been come on your table. Or whenever you are even sitting in the restaurant, you will just imagine the kind of a feel when you are eating a pizza, when you're having a bite of pizza, for example I am giving. So whenever you like smell the fragrance or the smell of pizza coming from the restaurant out of the street food, you will have an urge or a craving kind of thing that you have to eat it even before the food is presented before you. So you will go towards it and you will make sure that you want to eat that particular thing because of the aromas and because of the smell. You have got that kind of stimulus in your mind. Third one can be a good report card feeling. So maybe each time you brought home a great report card, your parents will be very happy. Whenever you are going towards, like for example, standard 8, standard 9, then 10th standard, 11th standard. So whenever you will occur in the 12th standard, you will have a great feeling that okay, from 4 or 5 years, from past 4 and 5 years, I have been occurring a very great marks and grades in the school and report card. So this year also I will have a great report card. So before the examinations and after the examinations has been completed, when your report card is being coming, so before that only you will have a great like zeal and enthusiasm in yourself that oh, this time also I will achieve great marks. And you will prepare like before pre parties, and that you will have with your families and with your friends, that you will be happy to see your report card. This can be your feeling, this can be a stimulation, because you have been achieving great marks and great grades before an earlier part of your grades and standards too. Fourth, smoke craving. You used to smoke in a certain outside area at work, but have recently quit smoking. You have to quit smoking because you think that smoking is injurious to health. So every time you will go to the place where you used to have a kind of time with your cigarette, so whenever you will go to this outside area, your body craves a cigarette. Your body will want a cigarette. You will think that this was the area where I used to have cigarette, where you used to smoke. So your body will urge to have a cigarette, will crave for a cigarette. Fifth and the last is fear of thunderbolt and thunderstorms. So during a thunderstorm, a tree breaks and falls onto your house, causing a major damage. Now, whenever you hear thunderstorms and thunderbolts, like whenever the rain is coming, whenever you see in the weather forecast that the rain will be coming, so whenever you will hear, you will see the thunderstorms, you feel anxiety, you feel depression, and everything from the past memories. You will collect the memories that when that time the thunderstorm came and the tree break into your house, so you will get that feeling and you will feel anxiety and depressive kind of a feeling that this time it should not happen. So you will have kind of a anxiety panic, and we can say anxiety or panic attack kind of a feeling whenever you will hear thunderstorms. And so on. Classical conditioning has given us the major influence on the field of psychology. As you can see in the screen, classical conditioning is also used to treat paranoias, phobias, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, recovering from any kind of intoxications and drugs, and anxiety kind of depressions, and any kind of panic attacks, which is also called, we can say, psychological disorders too. Pavlov's research further led to the development of important behavior therapies also, and techniques which can help the psychologist and physiologist and psychiatrists too in the field of psychology, and people and patients who are suffering from psychological disorders even in humans and animals. So let's have a quick recap. What is classical conditioning? So the classical conditioning was founded by Ivan P. Pavlov in the year of 1897 to 1899, and he was awarded by Nobel Prize for this kind of experimentations. And this was the best known of Pavlov's experiments involved the study of the salivation of the dogs. Ivan P. Pavlov noticed that the dogs would begin to salivate every time he entered in the room, even if he had no food. The dogs were associating his entrance in the room with being fed, and this led Pavlov to design a series of experiments in which he used various sound objects such as buzzer we can say to the rings, ringtone, chimes, and ringtones too, ring bells, to the condition the salivation response in dogs. He started by sounding a buzzer, or we can say a bell, each time food was given to the dogs, and found that the dog would start salivating immediately after hearing the buzzer or the bell. Even before seeing the food, even before the food was presented in front of the dog had an imaginary kind of a feeling or an urge that now the food will come if the buzzer has been pressed. So, after a period of time, Pavlov began sounding buzzer without giving any food at all, and found that the dogs continued to salivate at the sound of a buzzer and the ring, even if in the absence of food. So the mind of the dog has created that when the bell will ring, when the buzzer sound will come, they will immediately being fed, they will be fed by food, even if the food is not presented in front of them. Just by hearing the sound of the bell and buzzer, they just imagine that the food will come, and the salivation, which is the natural process of the dog whenever he comes in contact of food or inside of smell of food, he will do that. So they had learned to associate with the sound of the buzzer with being fed. So the dog's mind, for instance, for in the constance, we can say the dog's mind has continuously thought that the buzzer has been pressed and now he will be fed by the food. As you can see on the screen, this is before conditioning, during conditioning, after conditioning, three stages of classical conditioning, which is presented in the screen, and with the short forms of classical conditioning theories has been presented on the screen. If you want to take screenshot, you can take the screenshot of it for further use. So, in the end, in the conclusion, we will say classical condition was founded by Ivan P. Pavlov, and it was experimented on dogs and animals, but it is also considered nowadays. It is very useful in many kind of psychological disorders who are patients and individuals and human beings who are suffering from many kinds of psychological major disorders or minor disorders, whoever and whatever they are. Classical conditioning is very much like effective in phobias. If someone is having fear, excessive fear, which is also called phobias, and paranoias, paranoids disorder, and psychological disorders, who are having anxiety, depression disorders, anxiety disorders, social disorders, PTSD, and autoimmune disorders, which is also can cause psychological major effect on your brain and in your mind. So it is very useful in that. The classical conditioning is very useful in human behavior and human psychological disorders, which are being treated by psychologists. So that was it, guys. I hope you liked today's topic, which was classical conditioning. This is a very major and very famous theory and topic of in the field of psychology. I hope you like it, and more than liking it, I hope you find it knowledgeable and informative for yourself in your daily lives, or in your school studies, in your college studies, and in your daily life studies, for your information also. I hope you liked it, and if you like it, you can just give me a like. And if you want to give any kind of instruction, not instruction, okay, instruction also, and if you want to give any kind of a suggestion, you can just comment it right below down. So thank you for watching my video. I hope you will have a positive life ahead. Thank you. Bye bye.